The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Bangs.
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today, we are hearing the case of Maleficent versus Frozen. 2014's Maleficent is a reimagining of Disney's classic Sleeping Beauty, wherein the titular fairy curses an infant princess, only to find she may be the key to saving her magical realm. Frozen is a 2013 computer-animated musical fantasy about a young princess named Anna who must reverse a magical winter enchantment placed upon her kingdom by her frustrated sister, Elsa. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings in civil cases like this, the counsel appointed to represent each film will present their case for why their client is the superior movie. And ultimately, the jury will render its verdict as to which is the better film. This decision will hereby stand in all rankings and listicles from now on until the end of time, ad infinitum. Mr. Jeremy Black, you are representing Maleficent. You may begin your opening statement.
Thank you. I think Maleficent is witty, important. I think it takes a children's story and makes adult points about it, and I enjoyed seeing it.
Straight to the point. Thank you, Jeremy. Appearing on behalf of Frozen is Mr. Dylan J. Schlender. Please present your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the court today, we are here to talk about love, and that is capital L, love. And so it is very fortunate that we have noted love experts, myself and Jeremy Black, on the case. It is equally unfortunate that we have Big Ben Haslar and Maynard Banks sitting in judgment, but at the risk of alienating the jury further with my cheap jokes, let me get to the heart of the matter. Love is often depicted in fairy tales and nowhere more pronounced than the catalog of Disney. So that's what makes Frozen and Maleficent interesting movies released roughly around the same time. They are not dealing with the traditional boy meets girl love. We are seeing in Frozen, for example, a depth of emotion extending to family and friends, expounding on the value of sacrifice and forgiveness. These are touchstones of true love. Maleficent, while not as pat as the surface level would have you believe, does also engage in an exploration of love, but with much more solipsism and lack of nuance than we see in Frozen. So any preconceived notion you have, let it go. Because today we have two fine films that tackle difficult subject matters, but we are left with one that comes out just a bit ahead, and it's the one with the talking snowman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. I like to consider myself a love expert.
I know.
Jeremy, you may proceed with your first exhibit.
Well, I want to talk essentially about Maleficent, and I agree entirely with Dylan that they're both good films. I think he's spot on that, and I'd like to congratulate the channel for putting them both on. I'd like to say one or two things about Frozen, not to knock it too hard, but just one or two things about it. First of all, I liked the snowman. I think the snowman's hilarious with his bits of his head moving backwards and forwards, and I thought the songs are good. I have to say, my 2-year-old granddaughter was distressed extremely by Frozen, and repeatedly so, because she actually likes watching it, by the scene in which the ship capsizes and the parents die. And this has been very traumatic for her. Compared to that, the snow monster, no problem at all. That's exactly so it's in a way a kind of Bambi reborn there. And the other thing I'd like to say is actually Frozen, the plot, if you stop every so often and say, why on earth is this happening? What's going on here? This is a bit silly. The plot doesn't exactly cohere. as one would expect from highly intelligent AI creatures who are going to take over the world. You might as well think that they could get it done. But I'm going to turn over to Dylan, because then I have my coup de grace in my next episode.
Well, so let me address the plot in Frozen. I think it's definitely not the strongest plot we've seen in a Disney movie, but I think the message is what's more important. Getting back to these arguments, I wanted to talk about how they're portraying love. It's not so much about the big actions happening in the world. It's about how every individual character is reacting to it and how they're implementing their understanding of love or discovering a new understanding of love. So Elsa is learning how to accept herself. Anna is learning how to forgive and love Elsa. Kristoff is engaging in a much more platonic kind of love where he's trying to help his fellow man. Olaf is representing this childlike wonder and of love about the world where that's the default. He doesn't understand why people would necessarily be bad or hurt other people. This is a lesson that he kind of learns as the movie goes, but not in an unpalatable way that really makes you feel like he got burned because, he'd melt. And then Hans as the villain, obviously using love to manipulate Anna. So like, if you do stop and think about some of the plot beats, like why is the gigantic snow monster throwing them off the cliff and things like that. Yes, it can hurt there, but the actual message and the character growth, that's the real strength of the movie.
All right,
that shows what a nice man Dylan is. It really does show what an extreme. He may use terms like solipsism, which most 2-year-olds don't follow, but maybe he knows 2-year-olds.
You didn't know Dylan when he was 2.
He's really a nice man behind the theory.
Dylan's first word was solipsism.
It's true. I was unduly proud of it. It was very appropriate.
Jeremy, if you want to proceed with any further exhibits.
Yes, well, here we go. Because what nobody has pointed out in these is the enormous political significance of this. Remember, this is the Walt Disney Corporation, and it is currently under assault from which all-American hero, in inverted commas?
He's talking about DeSantis.
You're
talking about now, not at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to think of that at the time it's
what
released.
You have got here is a struggle encapsulated between the governor of Florida, who stands for virtue and is illuminated by an enormous backdrop, as in a Charlton Heston film. And there on the other side is the Disney Corporation, trying to talk about love between women. Have you ever heard anything so disgraceful?
And
that is
M&Ms.
number one. Number two, of course, from my far left-wing background, is I would say this shows that the Disney Corporation is a soft left organization, because really they conceal the oppression of the working man, forced in sub-zero temperature to cut ice for the benefit of others. And they make it sound like a jolly activity in which you just go along with it. And you even see children forced to cut ice as the capitalist system replicates itself in this fashion.
Hey, they make good money.
As we like, but this is not solipsism. This is capitalist indoctrination.
And we're better for it, because ice was in high demand when you have that kind of market pressure. Kristoff made enough money to pay off his sled. He wasn't in perpetual debt. So ice was good business. That was a good field to be in.
Yeah, but Kristoff is probably oppressing the workers. You see,
it's just him and the reindeer. He's a one-man shop.
Hey, if you could think of a better way to get ice, I'd like to hear it.
About this. This is what is so awful about this, that Disney encourages you to enjoy the exploitation of the workers, who are also...
I'm going to allow this.
Not just in sub-zero temperatures, but when it's dark.
It's very hard to cut ice in high temperatures.
Yeah, that's the name. That's the name of the game. And like I said, Kristoff becomes the official ice trader of all of Arendelle. at the end. So you could say they're actually arguing for a bit of rent sinking, like there's going to be all sorts of ICE regulations to keep Christoph protected.
A single film critic who has cut ice in this fashion? I think this is an
Ebert,
discussion of the crimes perpetuated on the working class. So what you are seeing is DeSantis, on the one hand, identifying the sort of liberalism in America as a bad thing. And on the other hand, you see neo-Marxists identifying this liberalism as doing down the working class. That is what is going on. And really realize that the script writers were deliberately doing this. Because what we have here is the inherent contradictions of capitalism exploited. And I think that's fascinating. So when you mention the snow monster is the dialectic of the progressive development towards the dictatorship of the proletariat. And you didn't realize that.
No, I did not realize that.
And why do you think spinning wheels have been removed? Spinning wheels were an honest way in which workers on a one-to-one basis worked, instead of which they were taken away by coal-driven spinning wheels in vast factories as the working class was proletarianized and divorced from its background. And again, you just think this is a matter of humor. I think what we are seeing here is Disney justifying the proletarianization of the American working class.
I think you're looking a little too deep into the spinning wheel. I mean, because that's what she said. If you prick yourself on the spinning wheel, you're going to fall into a deep sleep, which was changed from the original.
Again, DeSantis has a point there about the moral nature of Disney, so you see it's under attack from both directions. So one use that kind of language in a program intended for children. And, the governor of Florida wants to close it down because he wants to protect children so that they can all go and vote for him in a few years' time.
Well, he doesn't want, so first of all, so DeSantis doesn't want to close it down. He's just removed the special status for like Disney World, right? Like to incorporate it into the county. And obviously he was doing that in reaction to moves that Disney has made, and he's able to do that as governor, but we're getting a little far afield.
Mr. Schlender, will DeSantis reinstitute spinning wheels in our schools or not?
I don't know. Let him get through the primary first, okay? There hasn't even been a debate yet. No, but if you want to look at the class distinctions in each movie, actually, I do think it's pretty interesting, because looking at Frozen, for example, you have Elsa having to accept her leadership position. This is the first time in a Disney movie where a princess has become a queen on screen. And as queen, obviously, she has certain obligations that she can't, quote unquote, let go, even though she really wants to. She wants to run away from it. And the ice storm that follows her, that lingers in Arendelle, is representative of those responsibilities that she has to her people if they're going to live in that kind of system. She can't take the good with the bad. And then you see the kind of power seeking that system produces with Prince Hans. He was 13th in line for the throne, so he wanted to marry in to this royal family. So you do have some interesting class dynamics at work in Frozen, but it's almost this noblesse oblige that the queen obviously would have to have to her people. Anna being a princess going out again. This is all to save Arendelle, and it's obviously not a perfect system. I personally wouldn't want to live under a queen like you've done for so much of your life, Mr. Black.
Depends on the queen.
Yeah. So, and then when you bring this dichotomy over to Maleficent, again, it is interesting because Maleficent has obligations to the fairy people and the people who live in the moors and the hedge. I forget exactly what they call the term, where she lives, where the magic folk live. And then you have Stefan with obligations not only to his kingdom to protect it from the fairy folk, presumably, but also to his daughter, hence why he gets all the spinning wheels collected. It wasn't to crush any kind of uprising. You'll notice most of the spinning wheels were taken from within the castle anyway, from his servants who were working with him. So if anything, removing the spinning wheels is going to force a level of creativity amongst these workers that they hadn't had before. And
very classic. Well, that's a really classic middle class justification.
I would say, hey, and then Stefan was a boon to the iron industry, which, as you know, iron was the wave of the future. So
Wave of the future.
That. Absolutely.
Well,
And iron helps us play, Jeremy.
Can I make some other political metaphors? Which
Please.
I don't think... First of all, I think making fun of the Pixies in Maleficent was a bit bad. I do think that. I mean, if one wants to look at Maleficent's faults, making fun of the Pixies was not good. But there are two broader questions about Frozen. First of all, is it not the case that in drawing attention to the possible failure of female leadership, the danger it poses, this was a metaphor aimed at attacking the forthcoming run of Hillary Clinton? I think it was clearly located in that. Now, what I can't decide is whether it came from the Bernie Sanders camp or from the Donald Trump. Next, what they are doing is emphasizing in Frozen the threat to the world from freezing. This is an attempt to take our attention away from climate warming. And I think that is the most serious failure of Frozen. Little children will sit there thinking the world is about to be taken over by ice at a very time that we know that the Arctic is melting. So all this talk about solecisms and theoretical points is really missing it. This is about a threat to the world which is being disguised within this film.
This is my favorite episode.
This is excellent. So I want to push back on this point about a failure of female leadership, because we see in several movies, in stories, anything where a king will ride into battle as the standard bearer for their armies, right? And this would be appropriate for the time period that Frozen's taken place. So Anna and Elsa actually being hands-on rulers works in the time and place. I think it shows their strength. I don't think it shows the danger or this idea that could be a
crisis. Surely they caused the crisis.
Well, she causes the crisis on accident, but that's because she has magic powers she doesn't understand. It could have happened to anyone.
No,
with magic powers. Anyone with magic powers.
Profoundly misogynist. Under the pretense of being nice about girl bonding, it's profoundly misogynist, because what it's saying is when the parents were alive with the man as king, it all went okay. Then you have the daughter take over, and because she has this rather creepy hand condition, it all goes to seed and the whole thing becomes pear-shaped. Yes, I agree with you, the men aren't any particular things to shake hands with, but, as it were, but it is having a female leader, which for America read a female president, because you're dealing with impressionable, 25-year-olds who are members of the Southern Baptists. Whoops, you're dealing with impressionable 2-year-olds, sorry. So they are going to take from it the idea that having a female leader is a bad thing.
Jeremy, to counterpoint this, does Maleficent do anything to bolster the idea of a female leader?
Well, Maleficent has depth as a character because she can move from being good to bad to good. And I actually think...
She's a tweener.
Sorry?
A tweener.
Really? I don't know.
It's a professional wrestling term. It's when you're not quite good or bad.
Right, I'm sure Angelica Jolie might be your idea of somebody to wrestle with, but I've not really thought of her in that light.
I haven't thought of that either, Jeremy. I haven't thought about it.
Oh my God.
But what does Maleficent have to say about it?
Didn't your headmaster tell you that that's the way to have your eyesight go?
I didn't have that kind of headmaster like Pink Floyd had. We didn't have them. I had a very nice principal. But what does Maleficent have to say about a female leader? Does it offer hope for it?
Yes, I think it does. I mean, the point is the man is truly awful in Maleficent to a degree that is worse than Hans, I would say. I mean, I think Hans is pretty bad. I think Hans is pretty bad. He's nasty and manipulative and quite happy to see death come in, but he doesn't actually try and, as it were, operate with the occult. And in a way, one of the interesting things, and again, you could say DeSantis has to take aim against this, is what you're showing in Maleficent is the magic of the occult can be the good magic.
And is DeSantis Hans or Stefan?
That's a good question, actually. So maybe
it's a terrible question.
It is not.
That is awful.
I will remove you from this court.
Oh, God, please do.
The judge has asked a very reasonable point, which has put me on the spot and which I hadn't thought adequately. I mean, Trump is an example of an orange version of the snow monster, I suppose.
Okay, I like that. Don't eat the orange snow. I know that. But okay, we'll let you brew on that.
I want to address like the female leadership aspect as it pertains to Maleficent, and I think one of the ways that Maleficent doesn't measure up to Frozen is, first of all, we have to look at two things for Maleficent, right? One, Maleficent is a villain in the original Sleeping Beauty, so despite Oliver Stone's best efforts in this directorial debut here, we have to have some connective tissue that remains. And we also do have a bit of a political problem, a bit more of a cultural problem, is once Maleficent goes full, yes, queen, slay, slay, you can't roll that back, unfortunately. So what we have is a movie that would be much more interesting if Maleficent was able to find herself again, if she was able to renew herself in that original spirit of kindness that she had at the beginning of the movie. I really don't think she does. I think going back to the solipsism that we had been decrying and talking about, I think she does that out of frustration. I don't think she does it out of love. I think Maleficent is a character who is frustrated and aggravated by her own decisions and is not actually motivated by love.
I'm not trying to disagree with you here, but
please.
Is it not the case in the film that Aurora is only going to be saved by being kissed by the person that really loves her?
True love's kiss is the word, is the term.
And Maleficent loves her and therefore is able to rescue her. Is that not right?
That is what we see in the movie. But when you look at everything that led up to it, they're just telling us that. I don't think based on everything that we saw Maleficent do in the movie, you could call that act true love. Because the whole time, Maleficent is a wounded character. She is absolutely damaged. And she doesn't have this ability to forgive herself. She doesn't have this ability to forgive Stefan. Now, I know what some people might be thinking, maybe Stefan isn't worth forgiving. That's fine, but you don't forgive for the benefit of the other person. You forgive for yourself. And the kind of rage she had, this animosity, they say, that's it's drinking the poison hoping the other person will die. Maleficent never actually is able to heal, and since she's not able to heal, she's not able to express the true love that we're able to see in Frozen, vis-a-vis Anna towards Elsa, Elsa towards herself, Olaf basically to everyone. Because Maleficent is so damaged and regrets these things that she's done, that kiss is out of frustration at best, self-interest at worst. But I don't think you can look at her actions in that movie and relate it to any kind of practical understanding of love.
So Jeremy, let's go into this love between Maleficent and Aurora. Is this a motherly love? Is this a romantic love?
I think it's more of a motherly love, but I don't know. And I'm not sure that look, obviously,
we all wanted to see the kiss on the lips, right?
Stop, Your Honor. My God. Is it too late for Ben to be judge?
It is. But don't tell me that's not what you were expecting.
I've seen it many years ago, Maleficent, when it came out. So seeing it again didn't sort of hold too many surprises for me. I must admit, I wasn't seeing it as a manual about true love. I was seeing it as a way in which, in fairy stories, characters are generally different to how they appear, and there usually is a magic resolution. And I think that that's the case in Maleficent, but it's also a wittier take, precisely because it's centered on her, and also because of some of the dialogue and some of the some of the action. I myself, I'm very interested in what Dylan's saying here. I myself am a bit more positive about the literal interpretation in a fairy story. So I myself would say, no, Maleficent defeats evil and redeems herself and literally the heroine, Aurora, or the future, if you like. Aurora, the dawn, the future. I mean, you couldn't really be more significant in a sense, by being willing to communicate a kiss based on love, which is a complete counterpoint to the prick from the spinning wheel.
Which prick, Hans or Stefan?
Sorry?
No.
Whereas in Frozen, I think it's very interesting about the relationship between the two sisters. I think that's really interesting. But I have to say, to me, I mean, it's aimed at a different age group, so this is not a criticism of Frozen. They both work for the age group of their audience. And as Dylan, I thought, very fairly said at the beginning, and I agree with him entirely, they are both very good films. But I think in terms of what love, as it were, it really is. I know this sounds weird when Maleficent has a character with wings and all the rest of it. I think Frozen is a bit odder in terms of the emotional dynamism there and the relationship between the two sisters. I mean, if anything, it's a buddy film. I mean, or the sisterly equivalent of a buddy film. But rather than, I'm not sure that I would have it, as it were, as sisters. I mean, that is how they do it, but that doesn't quite work for me.
All right, are there any final points you'd like to make before I let Dylan wrap up his points as well?
Yes. I mean, first of all, I think we've got two very good films. I congratulate you. I think Frozen is a very good film. I think the plot at times is a bit of a jumble, but I think it is a very good film. Maleficent is aiming for a different age group. I think it works for that age group because I think it is a genuinely interesting reworking of a tale. And I think it actually sustains its reworking successfully. So narrowly, I would put Maleficent ahead. But if either of them won, I don't think it is a result of any miscarriage of justice.
All right, that'll be a first for us. But thank you, Jeremy. Dylan, any final points you'd like to make too before we go to our closing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to mention, because I think so. I'm very happy we've talked about a lot of these political elements and the philosophical elements of the film
And the kissing stuff.
Yeah, but a lot about the kissing. And so I wanted to bring up because when Maleficent first came up, I immediately thought of a novel that John Updike wrote in 2000, the critically panned Gertrude and Claudius, which was a reimagined prequel to Shakespeare's Hamlet. And in it, we're treated to an alternate reality where Claudius and Gertrude were actually secret lovers and conspired to kill the king. And I mention this because we see this all the time in reimaginings of villains like Claudius or Maleficent. We see that the justification is often love, again, capital L, love. And, acting out of love or love scorn maybe makes the villain more relatable, but it doesn't necessarily make them any less villainous. So this is why in Howard Zinn's A People's History of Sleeping Beauty, we are treated so much to how Maleficent was otherwise a very good fairy until her heart got broken, right? So the movie then just kind of moves along and she supposedly gains feelings for Princess Aurora. But as I mentioned earlier in one of my counterpoints to Jeremy, I really think we see this not as acts of love, but acts of self-interest and selfishness on Maleficent's point. So that's just one of the broader points I wanted to make about how.
Can I just say on that
it's one, not a yeah.
Yeah, I'm just on that one. Just to not to disagree with you, but just to offer it slightly differently. I can see where you're coming from on that, though. I do think if you're looking for a cultural echo, and this is going to sound stupid, but if you're looking for a cultural echo, the notion of the good angel that fell is, of course, central to the notion of the devil, and stories like Paradise Lost. But the point here is that, in a sense, Maleficent redeems herself by the kiss. And on top of that, what in theory are the goodies as a separate but related issue, are revealed not to be in that light. So in a sense, the future Aurora is shadowed in sleep, whilst figures fight it out, all of whom are less than perfect. But in that conflict, you discover whom is better than the other. And that is a classic element of fairy story as tragedy, as opposed to fairy story in which there's the clear good and the clear bad, which you might argue is, you know, a version of, shall we say, some religious themes. I don't want to cause too much offense to people. Well, I did.
Oh, why stop now?
I'm clutching my pearls already.
So Jeremy, but one of the things that hurts Maleficent on this point, because I have no problem with this idea of moral ambiguity. Maybe she is a good guy or bad guy. But the problem is they're trading in on the name of Maleficent, where they're trading in on the popularity of Sleeping Beauty.
Yes.
And they have to contort this so much. So, like, one example, they have to change Maleficent's curse on Aurora. In the cartoon, she clearly says she'll die. The fairy uses the last witch to change it into a deep sleep. But in this one, Maleficent has this glimmering of the change of heart right out the gate. And she doesn't turn into the dragon at the end. The crow turns into the dragon at the end. She doesn't get stabbed.
I believe he's a raven.
By the prince. The raven, yes. As you know, Your Honor, I believe they're going through their stone. But it's a stupid joke that only May and I would
He's
get.
still called Diablo in this, right?
We should cut that. He's DeVille. He's DeVille.
Oh, Diablo is better.
Yes, but well, again, because they're trying to blunt the evilness, right? So,
well, DeVille is pretty obvious, right?
Still, I mean, like this. Look, this movie. They're really trying to contort this so we can justify Maleficent becoming good, which again, I'm not entirely convinced of at the end. I'm not entirely convinced she redeemed herself in any meaningful way as it pertains to love. She redeemed herself in a very self-interested way, you know, in like, you know, the way like maybe someone would steal bread to feed their family, you know, but like that's still a crime, you know. So she has a lot to answer for. She has a lot of healing to do, but because of the political and cultural dynamics, the box that she got put in by the time we get to the end of the movie, she's not able to bust out of it. And it's actually very unfortunate. Like if you were going to go,
that's a sign of how good the film is. That here we are, two intelligent people having an interesting conversation. Yeah, but you're the judge, and then having an interesting conversation about the meaning of what is fundamentally a fairy story, and both of us finding opportunities to echo really quite deep questions about human nature and human motivation and the possibility of good and the real presence of evil, and all of those working in a way that actually also produces an attractive film. And I think that's a strength of Maleficent. You know, we can disagree about, we're really disagreeing here about the character of Maleficent, but we're agreeing that the film gives one the opportunity to have this debate. And I would say that's actually a strength of the film.
It is a strength of the film. And it's so what I came into this case, I thought the real connective tissue here was how they both handle this idea of true love and acts of love. And so that's why I wanted to address the political stuff you brought up is very interesting. I was very happy to address that too. But if we're looking at each movie, and I guess the thesis for my case is if you're looking at each movie, which one handles a representation of love better, which one is better to be emulated, which one is a better story or moral to take, I think Frozen comes out on top. So that's broadly where I'm coming from. I think the idea of Maleficent being a tragic figure is interesting. I don't necessarily think this was the right vehicle to tell the story.
Maybe you're right in both respects. Yeah. Maybe that the relationship between the two sisters is a more interesting and, in a way, profound discussion about love or close affection or whatever you want to talk about between human beings, whereas Maleficent is a much better portrayal of the ambiguity of a human being under pressure.
I would say
and
trauma
maybe they both
is what it
work.
is.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe they both work. I mean, you know, I think you're correct. I think they both, and that in a way we're looking almost to oppose two films that maybe should be given a joint victory.
Can't do it. Can't. You pitch it every time.
I know. But so no, Jeremy, it is an interesting point because my issue with Maleficent, when I think that ultimately can be a toxic message that someone could take away from this, is this idea that you don't have to heal from your trauma necessarily. And not everyone does. Don't get me wrong. I understand there's a lot of things that can happen out there. I mean, reading between the lines, Maleficent losing her wings, I mean, it was clearly a rape allegory. There's no question about it. And obviously that's very traumatic. But this idea that then you're going to just carry that with you without trying to heal. That's what really gets me about this, is that Maleficent makes no attempts at healing or addressing or dealing with that trauma. It ultimately just gets swept under the rug in her cold facade, ultimately ending in what as I said earlier, was not a true love kiss, but a kiss of desperation, frustration,
well, okay, can I just
self-interest.
Say on that,
You're saying she has to let it go.
I agree with you there to the last point. I do think it is a true love kiss, but leave that to one side.
Okay, one side.
Leave that to one side. I think you're correct to say that the character is, in a sense, to borrow a phrase from elsewhere, frozen. All right.
Yes.
I think that is correct. But I don't think that's necessarily inaccurate. And in a sense that and as I said, they're both very good films. They're essentially aimed at different age groups. It would be very hard to have a character like Maleficent in Frozen for the age group it's intended for.
Oh, 100%. You couldn't do it. Absolutely.
But Maleficent herself is really interesting because, to my mind, that is a more accurate description. You see, here's different approaches to psychology. We might all like to believe that people could be made whole again or use metaphors like healing, but actually I don't think that's true. I think people live their life with their experiences, many of them hateful and hurtful. Hopefully, they acquire some ability, because we live in society, we're not recluses, to be able then still to engage with others. And hopefully we don't try and hurt others too much. But actually, most people are damaged. Most people are very damaged. And surely that's the point about Maleficent. What we're doing is we're looking at a fairy tale from the perspective of a very damaged individual. Now, you might argue that they don't redeem themselves at the end, that it's weak. And, I personally don't agree, but it doesn't matter. That's not the point. We can each have our point of view, and that's fine. What I would say is interesting is this idea of the fairy story round the really troubling individual, or the individual who, in order to cope with their troubles, has, as it were, frozen themselves. And I think, and then has that absolute moment at the end where we can debate what we think is going on, but which possibly isn't going to change their personality at all, even if they're on the side of the good at the end, because they've still got all these burdens pressing on them.
Mr. Schlender, I'm going to let you respond to this point, and then we're going to move to closing argument.
Okay, so that's fair, Your Honor. So I basically agree with everything you were saying, Jeremy, and where my argument would hinge, the hinge point there is, I think the things you said, presenting that in a way that leads to true love, in an act of true love, in this case, a true love's kiss, I don't think it gets there. I think we're missing a step. I think we're missing a little bit of that healing, which may not be able to happen, but then that would mean that she's not able to show and express that true love that would be required to break the curse. And just so I could get another good point in for Frozen, we see all these threads resolve in Frozen, which is nice. We see Elsa accept herself. We see Anna sacrifice herself. We see Kristoff come back to try to save them. We see Hans get his just due, even though I would have loved to have seen Kristoff deck Hans. I think that would have played better. It doesn't matter. He gets his justice there. Even the Duke,
What did
the
Hans
Duke of
do to
Weaseltown. Well, no, Kristoff tried. Hans tried to kill them, and Kristoff was going to deck them. It was going to be great, but that's okay. We didn't need a final fight there because all the points were made, and we got a very satisfactory conclusion. And I am happy to rest there, Your Honor, as you said.
All right. All sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Jeremy, you may begin.
I think both these films are very good. I think we've heard a very eloquent presentation by Dylan. I think it's interesting that most of the discussion has been about Maleficent, not Frozen. And I think that captures the film's ability to use a fictional character in order to raise instructive issues about morality and ethics, and to do so in a way that fits with a strong storyline and a resonant storyline. So I would say on that basis, I would like to suggest Maleficent is the better film, but I in no way wish to argue that although, there were one or two irritations I had with Frozen and its difficulty of actually always working out why something was happening, I did think Frozen was also a good film, and I would urge listeners to watch both of them.
Thank you. Mr. Schlender, please present your closing argument.
Well, we certainly had a lot to talk about today. And it's funny, I had that line written down before I even realized we had so much to talk about today. And I would say on one level, I prefer Frozen simply because it's animated. And being the father of two children who were born in the 20-teens, I've seen it no less than 100,000 times. But for today's case, I would ask the jury to consider the messages of both films as they are presented and as they are trying to say something about love. Whether you agree with these notions of love as presented by the film is immaterial, because we need to look at how they're presenting it. They're putting them out in these terms, and we're addressing them on their own terms. Maleficent eschews forgiveness and self-love in favor of selfishness and in hopes of being fun revisionism of a classic tale. I just say, let women be villains. It's fine. Evil people do exist, and they don't all have to have tragic backstories. I'm not interested in Pol Pot's French romance that caused him to become the brutal butcher of Cambodia, for example. That is the next Disney movie.
Oh, no.
And then, whereas Frozen gives us a piece of what love can be to all of the characters, and all of their arcs get resolved in a very satisfactory way. So today, I say meh to the revisionism and focus on what love can be and not what its malformed lump isn't. Again, we're looking at the film with the talking snowman. And I do just want to add to, Jerry, this was a fantastic conversation. So you guys have a lot of work to do in the jury. So thank you.
Thank you. And you were very, very, very good.
You're always great, Jeremy. You're always great.
Well, anyway,
all right, enough patting on the back now. Here.
We don't need the judges now.
Yeah, Jeremy and I are going to go get a pint. You guys have fun.
Members of the jury, Mr. Maynard Bangs, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. I love my tiny little feet, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine which film is the superior movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
You think Elsa lives in a kingdom of isolation or a kingdom of isolation? It's a little thing, but it always bugged me.
It's actually a good question. That's a good question.
Well, I did not get the required reading for this case. I watched both films. I was not thinking about it in a socio-political context at all. So I have a lot
That's your fault.
Yeah, apparently. I was thinking in terms of female leadership. I was thinking in terms of love. And I was thinking of it, and it wasn't brought up, as Disney as they make products, where they're going from, because they've kind of evolved over the years, and now they seem to be very much interested in product making, which all art is a product, but they're focusing their story beats on what would make other people buy them rather than what is actually good. But that wasn't brought up, so I'll scratch off all my notes there. Ryan, what did you think?
Well, Frozen is good. I wouldn't say that it's great. It's good. I mean, it would be 40% better if it was hand drawn, but that's just me.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a certain charm to an old-fashioned Disney musical because they've been straying from that path for a while now. I guess because they figure that it's parents don't care about it and kids don't care about it, but I do.
Yeah.
And
you're
when
both.
I'm watching Maleficent, it's like this ugly digital slop. And as I'm watching, I'm like, I can't believe it. I'm nostalgic for Lord of the Rings, a franchise I do not care for. But I was like, oh, they did it so much better. Why can't it be this good? And I was just thinking like, oh man, remember Sleeping Beauty? Animation and widescreen. Sleeping Beauty's great. And that's not a feeling you should have watching a movie. Thinking,
so
I like the other version.
CGI in there. I don't know where to focus on in Maleficent.
Oh my god. And the pixies, oh my god, they freak me out. Imelda Staunton, Leslie Manville, one of my favorite actresses, Juno Temple, just completely shrinking them down to size is one of the most disturbing things that Disney has ever done. It's truly frightening.
But it wasn't brought up, so you're instructed to disregard that.
Yeah. And then something that I noticed is that Charlton Copley has a worse Scottish accent than our bailiff.
Not possible, sir. Not possible. Rob, what did you think?
Between the two films, I definitely saw is that, I agree with you. I don't like the CGI slop of Maleficent. But, you've got Frozen, which is definitely a kid's movie, and you've got Maleficent that's more of a teen movie. It's more willing to deal with a somewhat deeper topic, and I think our debate really showed that. I think it
is a rape revenge movie. That's right. That's a very salient point.
Yeah.
But does Frozen work as an all ages movie, or does it only appeal to kids?
This is the first time I saw either movie, and Frozen has been hyped up, and I've heard glimpses of it because I had a roommate who loved Disney, so she watched it endlessly. So I'm familiar with a couple of the songs, and Let It Go is definitely not as good as popular as it got. Want to Build a Snowman's much better.
And almost every song in Frozen 2 is much better.
Into the Unknown is the best song in the entire franchise. I will stake my reputation on it.
I can't say anything about Frozen 2 until we do Frozen 2 versus Maleficent 2.
Maleficent doesn't have a chance.
So I could not see watching Frozen 100,000 times. So it's like the plot to me, it doesn't really move. It doesn't have like the adventure of Aladdin or Lion King or any of the Disneys that I would and did watch a lot as a kid over and over. I couldn't see doing it with Frozen. I kind of dislike Olaf. I think he's really...
I love Olaf. He likes warm hugs. How can I dislike a character like that? He's
just so tonally... Like, everything else about Frozen is a little bit more grounded. Yes, there's magical snow and stuff, but it's still all a little grounded. And then Olaf is just so goofy and sticks out. And he does have some great funny lines, some of the best funny lines, but he's weird in the movie. Then you have Maleficent, who I cheered a bunch. It got a bunch of pops out of me. When the prince doesn't wake her up with the kiss, I was psyched. And for a second I kind of thought I thought it was Diablo, apparently it's Deville. I kind of thought that the Raven was going to have to kiss her, because like he had seen her growing up and then fallen in love. But when they actually did it being Maleficent, I popped. I understand them doing the forehead kiss. I do think that was a little bit partially more romantic than anything. I mean, Maleficent age.
It's about adoptive motherhood.
I don't know.
No, it is.
I'm not sure. I don't know about that. There's like a protectiveness of trying to keep her all to yourself and stuff. But I really popped that they went with that direction. I love the character of Maleficent. She's probably my favorite Disney villain. But she always has been kind of one-dimensional, right? She's just evil, and you kind of, there's no backstory that you're ever given in the movie itself as to why that is.
Really.
Yeah, well, it's not really what the thing was about. It was more about a badass dragon. But but so I liked seeing this other side to it. I don't mind the character getting a redemption.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. So those are some of my thoughts. Like I liked Frozen. I liked them both. It's kind of a coin toss to me, but what I could think and break down more, I think there's more meat on the Maleficent bone. But how about you, Ben? You want me to lock in already?
Oh, I would just belong in the conversation.
No, nothing. You got to be some.
I think Maleficent is chained down by Sleeping Beauty too much, and I actually haven't seen Sleeping Beauty, so that aspect of it is kind of annoying to me. Like all the story beats are like, well, this is what happens in Sleeping Beauty, so we have to make it end this way to make it, to cram that square peg into that circular hole. And it wasn't the story that they were trying to tell in Maleficent. I didn't think it was all that original, given that it's like Wicked does the same sort of thing. Like, oh, let's just tell it from the villain's perspective and give them some more depth. They execute that well with the rape revenge stuff and her turning of heart when she sees what she's done, like how her trauma has affected other people. So that was good. The CGI, awful, horrible. I could not stand to watch it. Frozen, I think the plot is contrived as hell. Like the whole thing, like all this problem could have been solved if the parents just would have been like, open with their kids from the beginning rather than, let's just wipe our child's memory of who our sister is. This makes no damn sense whatsoever. But it does have a lot of heart between these two sisters. Like when I seen Frozen from the side, because I didn't watch it until recently, it was all about Elsa and Let It Go, and I just didn't see the point of it. But watching it, it is all about Anna. Anna is the heart and soul of this movie. Like, why is she not getting attention? Her story drives everything. But no, nobody cares. It's just that and Olaf. And I think it is an all ages story. I think that it's a gentleman's 6 out of 10 because I'm an adult, but I think Maleficent is more of a 4 out of 10 for me, but I'm going to go based on the facts.
Well, who's got to lock in first?
You do, sir.
All right. Well, I'll slightly be the fly in the ointment because someone's got to speak up for Maleficent, I think. I've always loved the character. I think Angelina does a great job with it. She already has the sharpest cheekbones in humanity. But but the fact that giving her those extra is just they're savage. And her evil smile is so great. And I like that they extended, well, again, I gotta call him Diablo, but apparently he's not. But I love that they gave him there's feels like there's more of a kinship there than a minionship, right? Like they're friends. Like Diablo's almost all she has for a long time. And I think there's just a lot of great, I think you have a character piece in Maleficent and you've got a little bit more of a narrative with Frozen, but I preferred the character piece, so I'm going with Maleficent. Despite its really shitty CGI.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Well, I'm a sucker for movies about sisters. I can't think of any other examples at the moment, but just trust me. And when I think about Frozen, I remember the movement to give Elsa a girlfriend. And in watching these movies again, it's really chicken shit that they didn't do it. Like that would be a real good opportunity to actually get some kind of message in there, but they don't do that. But Maleficent is a gentleman's 4. Frozen is a gentleman's 6.
Hey,
in case you didn't know, 6 is bigger than 4. So I'm gonna go Frozen, baby.
It's not a court of your opinion, though.
It's not better in golf, though.
Okay, yeah, I'm torn because I genuinely believe Frozen is better. But as far as the case presented, Mr. Black did dominate the conversation, and most of the conversation did seem focused on Maleficent. So that's on the side. What Dylan did land as far as what it managed to accomplish, let's see, socio-political, we'll give it to Maleficent. Female leadership, that's kind of a toss-up. They're going for different things. Age group, definitely Frozen, or like the age group it was trying to hit. True love, definitely Frozen. It's still 50-50. I'm going to go for Frozen. I'm going to trust my heart on this one. Let's go tell that very handsome.
You like your movies like you like your margaritas, huh?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of Maleficent versus Frozen, we find in favor of Frozen.
The verdict is so rendered. Frozen is declared the superior movie. I hereby order Maleficent to be locked in a car with 2 screaming toddlers, listening to Let It Go on repeat until it learns its lesson.
No! Oh my gosh, no!
Court is adjourned.
This is Grumbly Grumblerson. I'm so angry. Reporting to you from outside the Reels of Justice. Dylan J. Schlender, you big dummy. Would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
Well, Grumbly, this is probably like my new favorite case. Both movies, we were able to bring so much depth in discussing them, what they meant, what they represented, the philosophy, the politics of it all. So that was just tremendous. And Jeremy is just such a great guy. He's always coming on the show, always with these great ideas. Because I got to confess, when this first happened, I was like, what are we going? How do these movies relate? And then you watch it, you see how they fit together so well. So, I mean, it really was a coin flip. I would have been fine if Frozen lost to Maleficent, but, you know, Frozen winning, that's great. You know, I do think it had the stronger value of presenting true love, you know. But again, I just want to tip my hat to my good friend, Jeremy Black. Looking forward to 27 more episodes with him, you know, like 1 per book he writes per year, I think is what it's coming out to.
Thank you, he said sarcastically. And here comes Jeremy Black. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
Well, I think it was an interesting discussion, and I think I agree with the judges about the visual quality of one versus the other, and indeed also something we possibly could have said a bit more about. The way that children sing those songs do reflect their insistent character, the ones in Frozen. I think I've got a book I've worked on which is coming out on the Age of Nightmare, which is from the Castle of Otranto to Dracula. And I think in a way that themes from horror have much more resonance culturally in the 20th and now 21st century than we tend to allow for by our habit of sticking them in a box marked horror. And I just wonder whether somebody writing a history of horror films in 100 years' time will look at a film like Maleficent and say it introduces some of the classic themes, that the figure of horror, in fact, is a rather tortured character, that, as it were, we are all troubled. And in a sense, I rather liked Maleficent because it did make me think. I have to say, I thought Frozen was an attractive film, and I was quite happy to watch it. But I wouldn't say it made me think very much. But on the other hand, that may be a comment on my inadequacies, not those of the film. Very happy with what happened, and I look forward for many other episodes.
Thank you very much. What a bunch of crap. That's all we have for the house today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trauma analysis. I quit.
That Grumbly Grumbleson is so grumpy.
How grumpy is he?
He's so grumpy. I got nothing. I'm sorry.
I know.
Next time we'll work it out, though. We'll coordinate something. A very interesting case. We went far deeper into those movies than I think we.
Even the writers did, I think.
Yeah. Jeremy, what have you got going on? Or if you have any recommendations?
The
for
last
for us,
film I saw, which I thought was rather interesting, was one I'd never heard of before. And it was called School for Scandal, 1959. A rather good cast. It's an English film with all the weaknesses that pose, including Ian Carmichael. And basically, it's about somebody who is unsuccessful in love and discovers that there's a school which teaches you how to be a cad and do down your male rivals in order to get the heart or whatever of the lady you desire. And it's a rather whimsical, pleasant, but very well acted. Alistair Sim is in it. It's a good cast.
He's got to be he's got to be the headmaster or something, right?
Yes, it's good cast, and it's, if you have a sort of classic wet afternoon, it's something worth watching.
Okay. There's the quote right there.
Yeah.
Excellent. No, that sounds, and Alistair Sim, I'll always check out. He's like the
And
best
Jeremy,
Scrooge.
when's this horror book you're
Yeah,
writing?
I
When does
thought that
that
one
come
might
out?
be
That
good.
sounds
well,
good.
it's being published in the States, hopefully by the beginning of next year. And,
Oh, cool.
And I mean, it's very interesting, this, because I mean, what I'm arguing is there's two essential strands in horror. There's horror where evil has a real presence. So Dracula is an example of that.
Mhm.
And there's horror when in fact there's a rational explanation for what you are seeing. And the horror is that of your imagination, but you need to just leap the imagination and you will get through to it. So a work 6 years after Dracula is The Hound of the Baskervilles, where there isn't there is a large hound, but it's not a spectral being. It's because somebody has sorted this out as a way to try and give somebody else a heart attack. And I think those two plays are actually, by plays, I mean, obviously these are novels, but these two plays with our sense of the uncertain are actually really rather interesting, and many of them can be seen in a whole series of excellent films. But anyway, tell us what you've been watching.
Well, okay, sure.
Schlenzo, hit us with your recommendation.
Hey, that sounds good. Once I finish your other 130 books, that's right on top of the list.
I'm putting it on the top. I'm putting it on top of the list.
Jeremy, we need it on voice.
It does sound great. So I don't know why, but I find myself on a DC animated universe kick lately. So we did a cartoon today, so that's my thing, connective tissue, and I'm recommending 2021's Injustice. With an audacious premise that delves into the age-old question of what if Superman turned to the dark side, this film navigates familiar terrain with a unique finesse. It dares to examine the precipice upon which the Man of Steel stands every day and the inevitable consequences that ripple through the lives of those closest to him. Amidst the explosive action that propels the narrative forward, Injustice demonstrates a commendable commitment to character development. The way in which the beloved members of the Justice League grapple with this unprecedented crisis is a testament to the writer's keen understanding of their personalities. It is within these complex dynamics that the film finds its emotional depth, unearthing hidden facets of the heroes' souls and challenging our preconceived notions of their righteousness. While Injustice treads familiar ground, it manages to infuse the story with its own distinctive charm. The seamless fusion of exhilarating sequences and thought-provoking explorations of morality result in a film that offers both escapism and introspection. It reminds us that even in a world where the boundaries of heroism and villainy blur, the underlying essence of these timeless characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman remains intact. Injustice stands as a testament to the lasting power of these iconic tales and characters. It invites us to re-examine these familiar themes through a fresh lens and discover new layers of complexity. So while you may feel that sense of deja vu because we've all seen the Superman is evil before, rest assured that this film delivers an engaging and thought-provoking experience, reminding us that it is not the tale itself, but the manner in which it is told that continues to captivate you, me, and everyone. Not all that dissimilar from the movies we talked about today.
All right, great. I was the judge, so my recommendation today also plays with the tropes of Disney princesses to a comedic effect. 2007's Enchanted, starring Amy Adams and Patrick McDreamy Dempsey. A naive and idealistic young princess-to-be is transported by an evil queen from her animated world of fairy tales to the gritty live-action world of New York City. It has several hilarious Disney princess-inspired scenes, including summoning the animals of the inner city, namely rats and pigeons, to clean up around the apartment, and some fun with a poisoned apple teeny. But it also has tremendous musical numbers, including an absolute showstopper of a banger in Central Park, and All the animated sequences are traditional cell animation in homage to the classics of the genre, at a time when Disney had just done away with that department and began relying on those nasty computer boxes that we hate so much. The cast is also stellar top to bottom, with James Marsden playing the Prince Charming archetype, and the one and only Susan Sarandon as the evil Queen Nerissa, who in true villainous fashion transforms into a dragon in the climactic scene. Though it's computer generated and frankly pretty goofy, they should have gone for a badass design a la Maleficent. But apart from that, it's a stupendous movie for audiences of all ages, and it is currently streaming on Disney+.
Forgot that Idina Menzel is in it, and she's also Elsa.
Is she's she's
the
other
Dempsey's
girlfriend?
Yes,
she's the fiance. She's saying, oh, if that makes so much, because I also watched the sequel and she has a great song in the sequel, and I'm like, why didn't they let her sing on the first one?
That's why she wanted to do the first one, because she didn't have to sing.
Tissue.
It's there.
Completely intentional, Ryan. But I'll recommend the sequel when we do Frozen 2 versus Maleficent 2. Ryan, what have you got for us?
My recommendation is a film from 2023 by my second favorite living filmmaker, Wes Anderson, and it's called Asteroid City. I'm not going to describe the plot. It's a metatextual narrative and occasionally intentionally confounding. It's a play within a play that also happens to be a movie wrapped around by a television broadcast, but it's all about the vibe. Bright colors in the desert shot on Kodak film, an expansive ensemble cast that might be his most jam-packed to date, brilliantly rendered symmetrical frames, outstanding fonts and literary techniques, shifting aspect ratios and shifting aesthetics, stop-motion creature effects, including aliens, more deliberate dolly shots and zooms than you can count. And did I mention the cast? Jason Schwartzman, Max Fisher himself, Scarlett Johansson, Black Widow herself, Tom Hanks, Captain Phillips himself, Jeffrey Wright, Willem Dafoe, Jeff Goldblum, Steve Carell, Bryan Cranston, Margot Robbie for one scene, Eddie Norton, Adrian Brody, I guess, Tilda Swinton, etc. It's massive and probably my favorite film of the year to date. It makes me want to go back and watch all of Wes Anderson's films again, even though I already did so for our head-to-head episode of Royal Tenenbaums and Moonrise Kingdom, and even though I'm waiting for Criterion to put them out in 4K. As of this recording, Asteroid City is currently in theaters, you know, the place where you can watch movies for a week before they're dumped on VOD.
Oh.
Support your local library.
Yeah, I like those Wes Anderson movies, except for those non-emotive characters that are always in them.
Boo.
Big Ben, why don't you send us on home?
I'm going to recommend one of my all-time favorite Disney movies that I think still holds up, boasting fun storytelling, great characters, and lots of imagination. It's 2003's Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. I recently rewatched it, and all of the excitement and thrills I felt watching the first time are still there. Directed by Gore Verbinski of The Ring fame, Pirates features scenes of glorious color as the authorities almost catch Captain Jack Sparrow, and the haunting darkness as we go aboard the ship crewed by the damned. It has energetic choreography, clever writing that knows just when to make its own callbacks, and a soundtrack that still remains one of my favorites. If you're in our age group, there's no way that you missed it. But if you're slightly younger, or maybe you just missed out, you can head on over to Disney Plus, pour yourself a glass of reasonably priced rum. If Captain Morgan's too on the head, I did a Kenichi XO double barrel aged with notes of spice and coconut, and you can watch
That's
it.
Far too on the head.
Too far on the head, yes. And you can watch Pirates of the Caribbean on Disney Plus. And if you want to keep watching, just skip the one with the priest and the mermaid.
Is that what Stranger Tides?
Yeah,
the fourth one. Yeah, the first one is so good, and it's just amazing how they have never been able to recapture that again.
No.
They got too big for their britches.
Close, but
as cool as the Kraken is, and even Davy Jones is a cool character, but like they never quite get there. But yeah, I think
tried.
are they going for another one? What is this, number 6? That if they do another one, right?
Yeah, they're going back to Johnny Depp.
Wow.
Hey, Jeremy, have you ever written a book about pirates?
No, I've written a history of the Caribbean, but not one of pirates. Although there's some stuff on the Caribbean in there.
Well, yeah, there's pirates there, I've heard.
Oh yeah, there are pirates there.
And they were actually ghosts.
And that's all we have for our show, but we want to thank our guest, Jeremy Black, for joining us. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you. A pleasure.
We'll have you back again soon, and we hope everyone else will join us again as well, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Let it go.
Bang!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.